Perfect. All right, so I am going to, no, it says I am not allowed.
Hmm, Let me try again. It's funny, it shows you as a
There it is. All right.
wonderful. And Miss Keena Williams.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Um, can everybody see my screen? Can you see it, Nancy? You can see it? Okay, good. Let me make sure I can actually see it. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Okay, perfect. All right, so I am Keena Williams. I am not a podcaster. I am a podcast producer. I produce two podcasts currently, and we'll go through all of that. But I'm gonna start with um, how I generally like to present. I despise like slide decks. No offense, Nancy. But for me, I'd rather go through like what I actually do and just go over like the workflows. I think that's much more helpful. Um, and I'll start with just a little bit about me. So I kind of fell into podcasting, production, literally fell into it from my background is in digital marketing and branding. And then I used to take on like side work, working with like white labeling my services to PR firms, media firms. I worked with a owner of a small boutique PR firm who is here. This is her. I talked to her. This was years ago. One of the podcasts that I produce is now in its fourth season. We're going to go through all of that, but just like a quick download so you know who's in front of you. I talked to her just about starting a podcast just because I thought it was just another way of storytelling for her clients. Was not pitching myself to produce a podcast because I knew nothing about it. But I thought that it would be a great way for one, for media training for her clients and also to tell their stories through the narrative that she wanted. She said, great, she loved the idea, didn't know anything about podcasting, asked if I knew anything about it. I said no, but I can figure it out. And now here we are 4 seasons later. And that particular podcast has won like podcast video of the year, I think in 2013 with Signal Awards. So great podcast, great content. And now I'm in my first season and just got renewed for a second season for my second podcast. And we'll go through both of those. I podcast on the side, not, podcast production is one thing that I do. On a full-time basis, I own a AI company, Struxa.ai, and I'm an AI developer. I develop apps, I develop websites, I do AI implementations for small and mid-sized business, AI troubleshooting. Every day it changes as more people start to use the tools and aren't really aware of problems that may be happening, putting them into their workflows. So more and more services get added on. The great thing about me working in AI and also being a creative is I'm able to do cool things like this. So for the presentation, instead of me just doing like a static presentation, I just spun up a quick website. I spun up a quick website to be able to go over one, a little bit about me, best practices for video podcasting, using AI tools, and then just the workflows for both of the podcasts that I produce because they are very different. The podcast, as far as content, very different. And then just as far as the workflows go, they're also very different too. But I use a lot of AI in them, even though I am an AI developer and I use AI in everything that I do. Majority of the time, I don't think everything needs to have like AI in it. So we'll talk a bit about that. So Lights, camera, podcasts. This is just like some stats on Video First podcast shift. And I don't know if anyone else has seen this, but there, even for myself, I am a podcast listener, and I notice myself now that I kind of go more towards video now. Like I want to watch it. I think what happens a lot of times when I'm listening to something, especially if there's multiple people and they're in studio, when something happens, I kind of want to see it and feel it. So I think that's happening. There's been a huge shift with video first. So a huge shift in YouTube podcast being watched on YouTube. So video is definitely the, like another component. So today we'll just talk about like the complete video first workflow, budgets, resources, just depending on what your budget is and which way you want to go. I do two types of podcasts. I do virtual and in person, but for both podcasts it's hybrid. So I have some episodes that are in person and some of them that are virtual. It doesn't really matter. It just depends on what it depends on what your budget is, and it depends on what the goal is. If it's just like a hobby and you don't want to have to obviously get videographers, that's different. I tend to work with companies and organizations, so they have budgets to be able to do in person. And even with that, I don't necessarily recommend it for everything. And we'll go over how I help them make that distinction. So, um, one of the things, and I'll talk about this through the workflow, but one of the newest titles that I can add on here is the AI songwriter now, because one of the things that I started being able to do was create the sound that I wanted. Probably when I started, I'm going to back up for a second and just say if anybody has like questions, I know Nancy said you can put it in the Q&A. This is really just interactive. So if when I'm talking, I don't know if Nancy can see it, I can't see it, but if someone just like raises their hand and wants to ask a question while I'm talking, feel free to do that, because it could be more interactive. I know for me, I learn better that way instead of having to wait to the end. So I'm happy to stop at any time because I'm just going to go through everything. So if you have questions along the way, please feel free to ask. Okay. So the reason why I'm such an advocate for AI is just obviously like the amazing possibilities now. When I first started doing this podcast in particular, which is how I got here, this is the first podcast that I start producing that is again in its fourth season. So we've been doing this podcast now for 3.5 years. And when I first started it, there were a lot more outside services, which I'm able to now hold the creative control with that, with utilizing AI tools. One of those was the theme song for the podcast. The theme song was cool. It was never really what I loved because it didn't capture, it was an instrumental. But you kind of know how that is when you're kind of trying to tell someone like this creative vibe. I used to go on Fiverr and get them, which is Fiverr is great, helped me survive. But now at this point, you have the ability to really elevate and present a product that's very polished, that looks very branded. You can do all of that with AI. So I developed like a whole track, and I'm going to give you guys like the whole tool stack that I use, like all of the technology, but I developed a track for the podcast, How I Got Here. And it's actually a single now. It's being released. That'll be like available on streaming platforms and on social media. So it's being released on October 21st. So it's pretty cool because we extend things outside of just the podcast. Again, I'm going to tell you that I come from a marketing and a branding background. So everything has to have branches. Anytime that you're looking to grow something, and I'll put this in the best practices, but anytime you're looking to grow any product, you can't depend on one leg and just put too much heavy lifting. And what I mean by that is you have the podcast, however you're distributing it. If you're just like putting it on YouTube or you're putting it on the streaming platforms, that's great. The other branches to that can be if you obviously cross promoting, going on another podcast, going having a small, like event that can be virtual. It doesn't have to be a podcast episode, but you just put it under the podcast name. So we do a lot of that. On Monday, this podcast team is well, this team in general is located in New Jersey. I live in Miami. So I will fly there once a month or every other month. And there's events that happen under the brand of How I Got Here. So the How I Got Here podcast is hosted by Dreena Whitfield. She interviews women just on their unique career journeys, life journeys, and mostly African American women that are entrepreneurs, business leaders, personalities. That's a that there's a lot of people that can fall under that. So there's a lot that can be done with that. So we started having these dinner segments where these conversations are happening live. So the next one is happening Monday in New Jersey, and now with our new like official podcast theme, we're gonna release it there. And now this is just compounding content. That's it. That's really what you have to do to grow. You just have to figure out ways to compound your content, and it doesn't always have to be in person. There can be these small segments that you put on with roundtables that are online, depending on what your topic is, what your podcast is about, whatever your audience wants to see. But it's never going to be enough to just put it on YouTube or to just have it on the streaming platforms. There's things like you should have a newsletter, you should be optimizing for SEO. These are all the growth strategies that are just going to compound on top of each other. Um, I think with AI now, you don't even have to have, you can have a $200 budget and get something that is extremely polished, right? Um, this website that I built here, I'm actually going to share it with you afterwards. You can, like have it like a presentation. So we can walk through the full workflow, and we'll start with like the How I Got Here podcast, right? So one of the things I'm going to show first. Okay. So this is the setup for the podcast. This is one of our in-person in-person podcasts that we shoot in Atlanta. So we do a lot of taping in Atlanta and in New Jersey. There's obviously New Jersey is their home place. So that's going to be very cost efficient to shoot there. Atlanta, it just happens to be a lot of talent in Atlanta. So we have made that like a hub for where we shoot at a lot. What we generally do though is we go to Atlanta, we book out a studio. I have like a few studios. I am as well as me being the producer, I serve as the like creative director. Because just because I'm extremely creative, branding, all of that good stuff. So I like to have like the same aesthetic. So consistency builds branding. When we go here, like this particular episode, we shot 3 that day. And so that makes it very cost efficient, right? Whereas we have the studio for the day, we have the videographer, we try to shoot as many episodes as we can, and then as many drops and whatever other content we can grab, we do that. We'll go back to Atlanta again in November, and then a new location that we're going to be shooting in is in LA. This is able to be done again because I work with companies that have like budgets and they have goals in mind. They are, they want to be able to be sponsored. The dinner that we're doing on Monday is being sponsored by a bank. And along with that, we're doing like some sponsor content for them. But this is still able to be achieved with not doing it in person. The podcast looks extremely polished when you're doing it on Riverside. Everything else is just about the branding of it and how you're starting to present it. So the workflow on this, and most of that is really achieved really with AI tools. I'll stop for a second. Does anybody have any questions before I start getting into this workflow? I can't see, so no. So I'll keep going. No? Okay. All right. All right. So how I got here, this is our official track that I created on Sona and then released it as a single. That'll be great as well. We're creating content around that, kind of making like the dinner thing a little like single release with the new um theme song. So for the workflow, like the development and the pre-production, all of this is I'm very organized because on this particular podcast, there is a small team that helps with this, which is great, but it's also there's a lot more involved, very different from the other podcasts that I'll talk about, where it's just me and the host doing everything. So we have a lot more control of everything that goes out with this particular podcast because they are a PR firm. They use a lot of their staff to do a lot of the pitching. So how this podcast normally works is, and we're just into our fourth season. So I'll just like go over what that's look like. We meet once every 2 weeks. I feel like we're up to meeting once a week now, but we normally meet once every 2 weeks and kind of go over, is there like a particular theme or anything? For this season, we wanted to talk about like career transitions and impact. So with that in mind, they'll come and start like pitching guests that they think would be good to fit the theme. Yay or nay, we go through that and then we talk about like what these guests would look like, where are they located, and if we can do them virtual versus in person. Honestly, that's really up to the host, as their budget, but my guide that I give on that is that, let's just say it's someone that has like a bigger name. If we can get an in-person interview, then I would say the ROI on that is probably worth it to do that. And then if that's one factor, the other factor is that if it aligns up that we can have 3 to 4 interviews in one day, yes, then we should shoot that in person. When we go and shoot in Atlanta next month, we were just like able to secure like a big name in the WNBA. And we know that the WNBA right now is really hot. This is like for the first time, everybody's talking about the WNBA. So being able to have someone on the show from the WNBA will warrant us being able to go in person to shoot. So those are like the different things as far as like shooting in person. Um, but it's honestly doesn't need to be in person. If it's a quality content, then it doesn't matter because most people don't shoot, like in person that don't have like huge budgets. So once the guest is pitched, the guest agrees. Um, the team will schedule the date to get it on the calendar. And then they start to send me over the information. So my role in this is that I create the interview structure for the host, everything. I create the entire like interview structure for the host. I do all of like the background research. Where this is where AI starts to come in for me. So they send me over like a bio. I ask for headshot links, their website. I ask for all of that information just so I can continue to cross-reference to make sure that we are doing research on the right person. Definitely had it happen where someone has a common name. And then when I'm looking at the limited information that they may have sent, like a LinkedIn page and just like their name and a bio that seemed a little general, it can sometimes, if you're using like AI, it can give you some assumptions. I will talk about AI and the assumptions doing best practices, but I get that. I do like this, the deep research. My primary tool that I use in this workflow is ChatGPT projects, to be very specific. If you are familiar with ChatGPT projects, it is just you working on this one file. So whereas the memory that ChatGPT has, it is now just focused on the memory of what it has for this one particular podcast. That works. I do that for this one and the other one. So I go in, I add the person's name, all the information I have, and then we start going through like the deep research. I give it the parameters of what I'm looking for. Because this is set up as a how I got here project. It has all of the backed information, what angle that this interview is going to be from. So when it's doing deep research, it's doing deep research from that angle. You need to be very specific when you're dealing with AI. And this is with any AI tool. As much as, the buzzword was like prompt engineering, that's still valid, still will always be valid, that you need to know how to prompt, because it's going to be garbage in, garbage out. You have to be as specific as possible without giving a bunch of like, specific doesn't mean you're giving a bunch of personal information. So once I do the research on it, I have it create like this highlight doc for me, and I'm happy to, this is going to go live, but I'm going to continue to update it. So I'm just going to write down that I'll include a section with prompts in there. If anybody just wants to copy and paste and grab the prompts, if they want to start playing around with this, I'm happy to add that in there. So once I do the deep research, I have it create like this highlight doc that aligns with the angle that I'm looking for the interview. Does that. I probably go back with like one or two iterations of like, yeah, this is not, what I'm looking for. We don't need to talk about this. Once we do that and I'm on like the same page, we start drafting interview questions. So for this particular podcast, the host gets 3 sections. She gets this intro part, which you saw on the video when she was sitting on the couch. She gets like this intro part where she talks about the guest. She gets 11 to 13 questions. And then on this podcast, she ends it with like these quick fire questions. So we go into draft mode. Here's where I will say that as a creative, or even if you're not a creative, AI is an assistant and it's a tool, and it should never just take the place of what you're doing. So you never, whether it's interview questions or anything, would just allow it to create it and not go through and add voice and tone. So here's what that looks like for me. It drafts these interview questions, and then I go in and go through the questions. If I like it, like if I like the foundation of the question, now I'll start to go in and say, oh, I like this question. Here's how, I would word it. So I continue to do that, and that's probably 2 or 3 iterations. None of this is a simple, like process. It's just an assistance. It's just gonna, get you going. These are the ideas that you have. I start to look at it like if you had an intern that was helping you, this would be the same process. You have an intern that's helping you. You would never allow the intern to draft a bunch of questions and then send them over to your host, your client, and say, here, this is it, without you looking at it, without you going through it with them to say, this is a great first start, but here's how it would change that. This is exactly how you should treat AI. So I probably do like 2 or 3 iterations of just tone and style and say, yeah, I like this, but I would say it like this. And so we do that. Once I get it to where I like it, that interview guide is finalized, goes back over to the team to send to the host for the interview. My job there is done until, if it's virtual, the team handles the setup of like everything for Riverside. That's what we're using these days for virtual interviews. They'll send everything over to the guest and let the guest know this is going to be the time. Here's the equipment. Here's what you need. You know, there's a template that was built for that. If it's in person, then I'm on set acting as the producer, the director, just how I want it to look and feel. Sometimes having them just do a couple of retakes because I don't like how how the question came out or how it sounded. But for the most part, um, being able to use like AI with the videographer, they'll do the editing. For virtual, I do the editing. I don't like edits unless there's a retake in there and it's just something that should be taken out. I don't like edits. I think that normal conversation is full of like all of that. This is not like a formal interview. It's a conversation. I love it when it's authentic. So I don't go in editing out small words. I don't do that. I let the conversation go organically. So there's not really a lot of editing. Um, what I do is just balance it out. Like we just master the audio. You can do that in any tool. I use Descript for that, and I'm sure people have heard of that. I'll give a full list of all of the tools that we use. So once this is shot, whether that's in person or virtual, now once I get back the recording from the videographer will send me the recording without it being edited. I look at it first before they do an edit to say if there was anything that I just didn't want in there. There's been some times that a question was asked, and then maybe I feel like the guest, it may not show them in the best light just because it was maybe the context of it, so I'll take it out. That's the only thing that I'll do. And we'll probably have discussed that on set. Like, don't worry about it. I'm taking that out. I didn't like it. So I'll go in for that. I work with the same videographers in Atlanta, so they know the styles. I don't really have to do it for style. Once I get that back, again, in person or virtual, I go into Descript. Um, so in Descript, I do, I put it in Descript and now I want the transcript. I take that transcript, I go back to where, because you have to constantly continue to train your AI so it understands tone and style. So as you move on, they get it more and there's less iterations for this is not the language, that this person uses. So I take that transcript and go back into AI and drop it in where I created the questions for it to analyze and say, okay, you see exactly how they pose the question that we wrote. And so that training just continues to happen. So on the next time when they write the questions, they start to get it more and there's less iteration. It starts to sound more and more like the host. So that's the part of it that I do. And Descript, again, if I need to just like cut out things that were retakes or just something that doesn't need to be in there, I'll take that out, balance the audio. Other than that, I leave in everything else so it remains an authentic conversation. Um, our podcast video lives in Substack as well as YouTube. Just full transparency. I like Substack. There's not a huge amount of functionality. I think that we started using it because of like the interface of it, and it's great for community building there. But there's not a lot of functionality, and I don't know that. I know for sure on the other podcast that we'll talk about, I'm moving away from that for season two. Um, so we'll talk about that. So then I'd start to export in the transcripts with, now we're moving into like SEO. This is a big part of it. I would say when you're doing your deep research, and I'll give it to you in the prompt, you should definitely put in there that it's searching for keywords based on that particular guest that you're interviewing. You want to see like what people are searching for this guest. And make sure that you have that like in your descriptions for YouTube, for Substack, you're using it on Instagram. Again, this is the compounding for growth. Um, One of the other things too, that, all the things that I'm sharing, these are the practices that we use in order to get the podcast to continue to grow. You want to ask your guests if they have anything, depending on what type of podcast you have. I think at the end with this particular podcast, we may allude to some questions about what do you have next, but it's just really an organic conversation, so there's not really room for a heavy amount of promoting. At the end, there is always she always asks like, where can people reach you? So in the description is where you can really like ask the guest, is there anything that you want to promote? Once they tell me that, what I'll do is when creating the description, I can say like Keena of, like Structure that has a new single out, like those type of things. You can put that in the description. That's very helpful because now you have the guests wanting to promote the episode. So again, growth, everything compounded. Um, and that's like it for that. Once you have that description, you want to make sure that you can do all of this in Descript. You align it with the way you format it with the timing for the chapters so they can be clickable when they're downloaded on when they're uploaded to Apple. I think Spotify will click them too, and then YouTube, of course. And then for this particular podcast, when it's virtual, and I'll show you because I have it with Meet Me at the Highland. Let's see. I thought I did. I don't see it. Oh, here it is. Okay. So this is what the virtual looks like. I go into Canva and do this. And so the benefit of me having a videographer when these are done in person is that all of the extra stuff I don't have to do. This will have like the lower third on there because that'll be created, the editing, the sound, the balance, all of that is done by the videographer. When it's virtual, all of that is on me. So I have to do all of that. I put it in Canva. I add the branding, the lower thirds, all of the logos, and all of that. Right. So that's what a virtual one looks like. Still great quality. As long as it's good content, it doesn't matter. I mean, the vibe is always going to be great in person. This is like one of our studio sets that we shoot at in Atlanta. So that's a different one versus this one, but they kind of have like the same vibe. Um, all right, and then so that is the interview style. What else was I? Okay, perfect. So now for this particular podcast, once we do one of the other great things, like if you're I'm a solo producer, meaning I do all of this, and then when it gets all the way up to social media, then I hand it over to their team. I hand it over to their team just with some recommendations, just based on some of the powerful things that I heard during the interview. This is going to be great for quotes. I'll give them those. Descript, again, is really good. You can just highlight a section of it. Let me see. I'm going to try to open up Descript, but I think I'm going to have to change the thing. But you just highlight a section of it and right click, and that just clips out that particular quote. So I generally, when I send them over the full episode that's done and ready to go, I'll send it over and then send like another file that has like just here's some suggested clips to start with. This particular podcast is once every 2 weeks. So they have like a 2 week run to be able to do content. When we talk about the other one, that one is once a month. It's very dense. There's it's very rich content. So when we talked about that one, and I'll really go, it's just a completely different strategy. So I'll go into that one. This one here, the host really just left everything up to me since it was my idea. She was just happy to go along with all of my recommendations. So we didn't really collab a lot on the development of it. We're in the fourth season now, so obviously there's a lot of, we talk a lot more about what I have in mind or maybe some ideas that she may have seen, but for the most part, we're on the same page and I do all of the creatives. So once we finish with this and I hand it over to the social media team, their goal is to now promote this for 2 weeks. What I will say is, oh, AI is great. We are definitely in the age. This is why I keep stressing about compounding, because we are in the age where everybody, all of these platforms, Google, YouTube, they're all implementing AI themselves. And this is new technology for everyone. So algorithms are changing. So as algorithms change, you just have to kind of keep throwing stuff at the wall to see what works with growth. But very different now. There's not a growth strategy that's just going to stay the same anymore. Everything has to be dynamic. So I say that because I spent a lot of time watching things and saying, oh wow, look what, like look what this did. When I'm optimizing for SEO and then I go online to type in maybe someone that did an interview and I can see what's starting to show up at the top, it lets me, know kind of like what's working. Everything is just different now. This is very different. Because again, although the AI is great, there's just also it's ever changing. Um, so I'll go over some best practices and then I'll go into Meet Me at the Highland. I would always say planning, and I can really talk about Meet Me at the Highland here. The host, Gabby, had an idea to do a podcast. I don't even know. She had an idea to do a podcast. Uh, and she had some people that she wanted to maybe be on the podcast. We spent a month going through, she was referred to me, so I didn't know much, like about her. So we spent a month meeting every week because I'm actually writing these, telling these stories and writing these interviews. I can't really write for you if I don't know you. So we would spend just like hours really every week just talking like girlfriends, like me, just asking a bunch of questions, understanding like her organization and what she does, and really developing like brand guidelines. Meet Me at the Highland is different because although me and her developed this, it's just us two. So everything else has to go to someone outside when it comes to the marketing. For season two, I will take over for the marketing of it, and then we'll have like a third party for the social. For this particular one, because some things are going out, I am working on for season two, establishing like this actual solid like brand guidelines. Um, I don't know what I don't know until it happens. And so with this podcast, because it's different, I never had to I did brand guides, but I never had to do like these word banks to make sure that the wording is in her voice. I know her voice because, I've learned how she talks. We've worked together. We go over the interviews together. But when we're shooting it to a third party for them to promote it, some of the language that they use may not be. And she's, very careful and intentional about the things that she puts out there. So with this particular one, there's a word bank that's handed off with the brand, guidelines so they understand how to speak when they're doing social. You want to make sure that you're capturing this in 16 by 9 as well as 9 by 16 for reels and just like for the different like platforms. If you're doing it virtually, should be a feature. I know there's one in Riverside where you can change it for it to be vertical or horizontal. So that is very important. I talked about the authenticity over polish. That is my thing. Um, organizing the files, even for yourself, if it's just you or whether you working with a team. I always do like this episode 2 guest name and date structure for the naming, just so I can see them. I do that more because we work with other people. And I just always say that if there was a case where I wasn't, if I'm going to have someone working with me, or if I'm not going to be the producer anymore, I want these things to be easy and seamless, and not that someone has to keep contacting me to find out where to find something or how to do something. So that's my reason for that. We talked about all of this. AI best practices. You don't have to use ChatGPT. I don't recommend reputable platforms if you're putting them in your workflow. The reason for that is that we are probably at like 85% of AI startups that fail. So, you may have like an AI startup that came up and it's free, or they're offering this. When you implement that into your workflow and you're starting to use it, and then you look up and they're closing the doors, you have to take that out. And so it's not to say that anyone can fail, but at this point, ChatGPT, Claude, Descriptive, these are like reputable names that I would use, but I would just do research if you're wanting to use something else that you're completely implementing into your workflow. So there's, things like that. Um, we talked about like the training of the brand voice, very, very, very important, just because like one, you want it to sound like you, and by sounding like you want it to use your verbiage. That's tedious. There were times in the beginning when I trained for anything. Again, I use AI for a lot of the clients that I work with. um and I build brand voices with AI for the lot of the clients that I work with. That simply looks like them, us having a conversation. A lot of times I'll ask them to just send me like a voice note, and then I'll transcribe it, because that's easier than just tell me some words that you use or you don't use. So I'll have someone like transcribe that, send it over to me, and now I have like this word bank of things that, this is the language that they use. So that's very important to do that. Um, Meet me at the Highland. So it's pretty much, the development of this is pretty much the same. The only thing is, yeah, we talked about the word bank, the tone guide, the style reference, because she's very particular. Um, Very intentional. Now, how we shot this, we shoot well in advance for this. It's evergreen content. There's nothing that's in there that's going to be date sensitive. These are conversations about legacy and ancestors. So there's not really like anything in there that's date sensitive. We shot the content in March and April. It launched in June, and it's going all the way. One episode has been released a month. So I think the last episode is released in December. So it's evergreen content. We're right now planning for season 2, which won't release until June. Bulk shooting, that's all I'm a fan of. I'm a fan of that because it allows consistency. I don't like to uh, I think that that's a lot of heavy lifting, unless you are a well-established podcast. I think that would be great. And if you have the funds and the capability to shoot in real time, if that's the kind of content that you need. If you're not shooting content where you need to have something shot in real time, I mean, I wouldn't do it. Just depends on what you're shooting. For me, I like to have them in bulk, so that way we can plan them out. We can control when they go out. Some of these little like holidays, like uh, National Small Business Month, right? Like we can correlate some of the episodes to that. Women in business, there's different things. So we can control that if we have enough of bulk content that we can put them out. And so we'll start to schedule them based on that. And then it just gives us more control over the strategy for promoting it. So I really recommend it that way. Um, I included, and again, I'm going to give everybody access to this. I included what the budgets are for some of these things with the monthly. There's always free tiers on these. You can always start with a free tier. You can start with a free tier on Descriptive, on Canva if you need it. Substack is free. ChatGPT is even free. I don't use any of the free ones because I like to have the full features and I use them daily. So it just benefits me to have the regular ones. And I'm gonna stop talking because we are at 12:50. That hour went by very fast. And I will give anybody an opportunity to ask some questions. I did put like the next three steps here. So let me say this really quickly. I think that it is very important to, before you go in and say like, okay, I want to start doing video podcasting, just your goals and what, like one, what you can afford. If it studio doesn't have to be, it could be fully remote. I had another podcast that I didn't produce, but I consulted on it, fully remote podcast, great content, doesn't matter. Just having video is great. Um, Set realistic goals for your first 3 video episodes. I would just say if you're doing them virtual, if you can just like get 3 in your bucket in your bank and then decide on how often you want to have them and just be realistic. I think that if you have good content, you don't have to have something coming out every single week because you'll kind of burn yourself out if that's not something that you're doing full time. And just going in knowing what you're going to use, like what type of tech you're going to use, test them out free, do like some test episodes, see what you like. Decide on your branding, very important, just so it's like consistent. You want your branding to be very consistent. And then launch it and be patient. Like you have to be patient with growth, especially like all those things that I named that are happening right now with algorithms. You have to be patient with that. You have to be patient with AI. I don't have one thing that I didn't mention is because I don't do it anymore. I build automations. Um, for people, for organizations. I build automations from. I took automation out of this for me because I like to be in the middle of it. So there's nothing here that I would want to automate so that I don't see it. And I can actually automate things and keep a human in the loop, but it's not necessary. It's not. Maybe if I was like working on 10 of them at this point, but I like being in the middle of it because I don't think that we're at the point with AI that we should just be trusting. And this is coming from someone that develops in AI every day. So I will open up for any questions because I know that was a lot.
So we do have a question in the Q&A box. It
Okay.
says, congrats on your success. What is your contact info? What is the link to the webpage? And can you show a low, medium, and full-blown video budget? Thanks, Sarah.
Ooh, okay. My contact info. So I'm gonna share this, but I'll drop my LinkedIn once I stop sharing. I'll drop my LinkedIn so anybody could have the LinkedIn. And then I will share this. This honestly, I like this so much, and I actually did this specifically for here, but I said, oh, this is cool. I can just use this. So you'll see like changes probably on this today because I created this probably like within an hour, this entire like website and demo. So I'll drop the link to this in here. A low, medium. Okay, so I'm gonna show you this. Where is best practices? Okay, this right here, this virtual interviews thing, this costs the amount of whatever the monthly subscription is to do it here. And actually, this one was done in Zoom because the platform that we were using before Riverside was horrible. So she ended up recording this in Zoom. So whatever it cost her, and whatever her monthly subscription is in Zoom, we do not pay anybody to be on the show. So that's what this is. This is really the budget is going to be based on the subscription services that you use. For me to do this one, I use Descriptive. I pay Descriptive $20 a month, and I use that to be able to edit this. Again, I don't need an editor. I'm not doing heavy editing. I'm only taking out retakes. I'm only taking out just if something was weird, but the oop, the ums, the likes, all of that, that's natural talking to me. That's a natural conversation. All of that stays in for me. It's I like it authentic. I use Canva to create these. My Canva subscription is $15, right? I use Canva for that. And then Substack. Substack has no, Substack is free, and then YouTube is free, Apple, all of those are free. So the budget on this really has to do on the virtual interview is just the tools that I'm using. So I would probably say maybe like, I mean, if you split it amongst the episodes, it's really not a lot of money. There's really not even $100 on this one. This one, the in-person one, obviously you're getting, so this one's a little different. They don't rent out studios on this particular podcast. They will shoot wherever they are. So they have a lot of events with her primary organization. So she'll have her videographer there. The videographer there was there to capture footage. Even though it's not my money, I'm always on the side of how can we do this the most cost efficient. So the idea was when we were going to start shooting this, let's just shoot this at the locations that you've already rented. Let's see if you can just get a room and just have the videographer that you already have there shoot the podcast. So there was just the videographer was already being paid. So there was no outlay of cost to shoot these. This one, on the other hand, is different. How I got here, we actually do, again, for Atlanta, we'll rent out a studio and we'll have a videographer. So the studio to rent it out, I'll say is anywhere between $500 to $800 for the day. The videographer is anywhere from 1,500 maybe to 2,500. I think that our videographer, because we use the same one every time, has started to give us kind of like a break. So I think we may be doing 2,000 for him. Okay, so now we're at 2,000 plus maybe between 5 to 700 depending on what studio we're using. That is once though, maybe every quarter, and we're shooting 3 to 4 interviews. So, you know, that would let you know how that works. We're going to ramp it up only because now we're moving into wanting to get sponsors, and moving. So that's why we're doing more now, like in person, just because, like, again, the dinner that we're having on Monday, is being sponsored by a bank, and that's just really from what the content looks like, to be honest. Very, like very, very polished content. They like it. And so, yeah. So the budget is just really based on you can make it happen. I can shoot a podcast and, you know, any budget. I hope that answers the question.
If anybody has any other questions, before we close up shop, don't hesitate. You don't have to add it into the Q&A. If you just kind of want to chime on in, you can as well. Feel free to type in the chat. If not, Keena, anything else you'd like to share?
No, I'm going to send over, this is the link. I put that in there, and then I'll also put well, in that link, if you scroll to the bottom, I think I added my LinkedIn, but I'll drop my LinkedIn in there as well. I'm always like happy to help. I'm not the quickest at responding um on LinkedIn, but I do recommend that if you reach out to me and it's been a couple days, I'm fine with you just reaching out again and saying, "Hey, Keena," because I like to do that. Because for me, I'm always someone asking a bunch of questions. So I want to be able to offer that. I'm happy to help. This is like super fun for me, especially with me being able to integrate AI. I was like very excited last night as I was working on this, and I was like, how about I just build like a microsite really quick and put all of this stuff on here? So it literally took me an hour, and now I like it, and I'll keep it, and I'll keep like updating it with different iterations. So you'll start to see that. I'm gonna add like the prompts that I use under the I'm gonna create a new tab for AI, so it'll update.
Sorry about that. The chat was disabled, but it is up and ready now. If anybody has any last comments, questions, do you want to show love? Anything you want to do?
Well, Nancy, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And don't forget, everybody, this is just part one. This is a three-part segment, and we would love to see you back. We hope you register for the other two parts. And thank you all for your time, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.